Bettina Escauriza, and the topic is That Which Will Become the Earth, Anarcho, indigenous, speculative geographies.
So I wanted to begin by thanking the organizers for hosting us and setting up this event. There's a lot of invisible labor that goes into this, and I'm very grateful for it. I noticed that there was no land acknowledgement, and I come from the East Coast, and I don't know if that's not something that you do on the West Coast, but I thought I should start with a land acknowledgement. I apologize if I'm doing something wrong. So we are in Ohlone territory. And Ohlone people are still here and actively resisting colonization. And I wanted to sort of make it clear that in settler colonial states like this one, land-based revolutionary work must center the experiences of indigenous people in order to actually be revolutionary. Can everybody hear me? I'm small. And I also want to clearly express that the entirety of the United States is built on stolen land, and the very existence of the nation is predicated on the genocide of indigenous people and the slavery of indigenous people stolen through brutal force from their homelands in Africa. And I begin in this way in order to create a framework in which these truths are the axis that the movement of our revolutionary thinking and doing emerge from as we strive for our collective liberatory futures. So I wanted to be clear that I am speaking entirely for myself here in relation to the ideas that I'm presenting. I'm not a representative of the Guarani Nation. I'm not a representative of Paraguay. I'm not attached to any university or organization. And everything I'm going to tell you is based on my own experiences as a mestiza Paraguayan who immigrated to the States as a child. And I was sort of forced to think about my indigenous language in isolation because of that. I'm not an expert, I'm not an academic. I'm a filmmaker and a musician, and I eke out a living by teaching filmmaking to teens in Philadelphia, and I survive on the generosity of my very large supportive community of friends. And just as an aside, I'm super critical of the term mestizo, mestiza. That's like maybe a conversation for another time, but I just wanted to put that out there. And I wanted everyone to know that I identify as an anarchist. And I like the way that Sylvia Rivera Cusicanqui speaks about it when she says stained anarchism. And my anarchism is stained with indigeneity and spirituality that carries with it an absolute reverence for the divine energy of creation that pulsates through all things. So I am a daughter of the mestiza Guarani culture of Paraguay. And that's where I was born. Guarani, or Avañaé, is the official language of Paraguay, alongside with the colonial language of Spanish. The Guarani language is spoken by about 8 million people throughout the region, including northern Argentina, southern Brazil, and southern Bolivia. I would like to present to you today the Guarani language as an epistemological and philosophical powerhouse that is a vibrant form of counterpower to the oppressive ideologies of capitalism and the colonial and settler colonial nation state. For the purposes of the World-Ecology framework, I would like to propose that truly understanding and truthfully speaking the Guarani language necessitates that we abandon a fragmented view of human society and nature, as if they are somehow outside of each other, and come to the understanding that our body is the earth and the earth is our body. Here we are breathing together, and that's what it means to conspire. The philosophies held within the Guarani language refuse the logic of colonization, oppressive power, the state, and capitalism, and that through that refusal create possibilities for people to reimagine and reinvent the ways that they relate to each other, other living things, the land, their collective futures. For Guarani speakers, the Guarani language holds an active possibility for this sort of collective reinvention, and this positive tension is ever present as the language is spoken. I do offer this knowledge with a deep respect for the knowledge and epistemologies of the Ohlone people whose land we are gathering on today, and the philosophies and epistemologies of your own people. But it's not enough to speak the language, and I think it's important to note that traditional Guarani people who have been actively resisting colonization since first contact critique Mestizo Guarani speakers like myself because they believe that we do not speak the language properly, meaning that we do not understand that it is sacred, nor do we actually understand the true meaning of the words. And I agree with this critique. So in order to begin thinking about the language, I think we have to understand where it comes from. And for that, I need you to travel with me to the darkness before the earth. In the darkness before all things, the first being that came into life was the hummingbird, or the manimbe, the vibrating, beating core of creation, the beating that brings life into being. Now, the hummingbird is not the creator, but the hummingbird created itself. Then the creator, Yamandu, the first one, created itself, and the hummingbird nourished the creator from its beak in the darkness. Obviously, the creator is an unknowable entity, but creator does have a form that is recognizable and can be seen, and that is the form of the Tadje tree. We have 3 different versions of the tree: yellow, pink, and white flowers, and yellow is the creator. So the hummingbird and the creator in the form of the Tadje tree with yellow blossoms in the dark. And then the tree from the tree begin to flow the words that form Awanye, which is the language of the people. So the creator created the Guarani language in the darkness before the earth, before there were people to speak it. It is critical that you understand that the words existed before people existed. The words themselves are sacred, and to speak them is a sacred act. Nye, which means words or speech, is a manifestation of Nye'ah, which means the soul. Speech is the means through which Nye'ah, your soul, is expressed and comes to be known. To lie in Guarani is Nye'erei, which philosophically translates into having a soul without purpose. As I hope is evident to all of you by now, the Guarani language is philosophically rich, and it's its own sovereign being. It holds within it a framework for how to be in the world. And the first word concept that I wanted to share is tecosaso. I actually named one of my metal bands after this because I thought it was so awesome. So I mean, it means like free, or the state of being free, or freedom. But when you start to look at it, you come to understand that there's a deeper meaning, right? So teco means to be, state of being, our way of being, our culture, our temperament. And then sa means rope, chain, obstacle, or slavery. And so means to cut or break. So tecosaso is how you say the state of being free or freedom. But literally it means to exist in a state of cutting that which binds you or keeps you from being free, which implies that to be free requires action. There is a message on both sides. For the one that seeks their freedom, you must take action and cut that which keeps you from being free. And for the one that seeks to take someone's freedom, watch out. Your actions have put you on the wrong side of the Guarani blade, and you will be cut. In Guarani epistemology, to exist freely requires that you actively resist oppression. Within this framework, you have an active role to play in the ending of your oppression. The construction of a state of freedom is a constant act of engaging with forces that keep you from being free and struggling against them to attain your freedom. The other 2 big concepts we'll skim with you today, which I hope will give you a window into a vastly different kind of worlds we could be building together based on indigenous epistemologies. The 2 word concepts are evera, which is the Guarani word for tree, and teco'a, the Guarani word for village. So evera means tree, right? And evera means soil, earth, or the world. Ra means it will become, or it will be. So the way that you say tree in Guarani is to say that which will become the earth. This conceptualization of a tree sees it not as a singular discrete entity that is limited by its structure or form, but rather as something whose existence radiates outward to encompass concepts beyond its form, and which is conceived as a process of transformation. Both the tree and the earth are in a perpetual process of becoming. They exist while simultaneously coming into being. Trees are alive, they have their own integrity as beings and their own life trajectory. The concept of the future exists within their physical frame. They are here now and they will be here later. So this philosophical framework constructed by my ancestors, so-called savages, and I'm honored to be a part of this philosophical tradition. And if this kind of thinking makes me a savage, then I'm happy to be one. Understanding that trees have a future and that their future is to become the earth has important temporal significances. Both the tree and the earth that it becomes are a way of seeing life laid bare before you. They coexist in the same moment. They come from each other, and in this way, time is understood as a cycle that we too are a part of. By destroying a tree, you are preventing the future earth from coming into being. How much of this preventing of the future earth can we bear? If the forest is a place from which the future earth is made, then what does its destruction mean? Does the future earth have a right to exist? The second word concept I wanted to spend a little bit of time with is tekoa, which it's like village or Guarani settlement. And we spent time with Tego earlier. Way of being, state of existence, our culture. And then the little word with a really powerful meaning, right? Here, this place. So Tekoa then is the place where we can be who we are as a people. Thus, embedded within the concept of Tekoa is the idea that to be a person or community requires a sovereign place where one can practice what it means to be Guarani, which is a complicated thing that is always coming into being. It's not fixed. Without land, there is no Teko. The act of being requires a relationship to the land. Without these relationships, there is no way to be Guarani. Within Tekoa, the concept of selfhood is intimately dependent on the presence of your relations and a relationship to the land. Tekoa then is a place defined by ways of being, by relationships and not by territorial borders. This is a radically different concept of place than is held in Western society. This concept of place is alive and not easily mappable or fixed. The Guarani concept of place is bound by relationships between people and their spiritual and cultural practices in relation to other living things on an animate earth. The belief in an active constructing of a world in which Tekoa can exist is at its core about resistance. Resistance to alienation, resistance to colonial suffering, resistance to loss of culture, and resistance to death. And resistance is what makes the world anew. Resistance has a spatial dimension, a territory in which one can be free, and a temporal dimension, the future in which one is free. To resist is to believe in the existence of a future. The Guarani language is not a concept from the past, but rather a world-building concept from the future. My ancestors are from the future. To sit with the language, to speak it, to have discourse with it, is to travel in time in all its possible directions while finding ways to calling into being indigenous futurities. These kinds of philosophical and epistemological differences between indigenous versus imperialist colonial societies is at the center of the struggle over resource extraction, our current climate crisis, protection of biodiversity, preservation of languages, and a pluriversal approach to governance that respects people's autonomy. When you look at a forest and you see raw resources that must be processed into profit instead of seeing a whole society of individuals in the process of becoming the earth, then the harsh dichotomies of these opposing ways of seeing, knowing, and being in the world becomes overwhelmingly evident. And being from a community whose philosophies are marginalized through a process of colonization means that your communities, your people, are marginal too. And that marginalization of people, of assigning of people and places where those people live as not valuable, comes with devastating consequences. How we collectively conceive of something, even as something as seemingly simple as a tree, is of incredible consequence. Concepts matter because our philosophies shape the world. It is the philosophies that we subscribe to that make the lives of some people unlivable, that make the lives of our non-human relations unlivable, and that render our future an unlivable place. Thank you.